morning.
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 You shouldn't have breakfast. Before you talk, you shouldn't have breakfast. That's the rule. Because once you have breakfast, you're going to be heavy and we're not going to have much of interaction. So, the topic that I was asked to talk about today, which is really strange, is called Facebook Me. To be honest with you, I don't use much of Facebook. So, I was in a bit of a limbo when I was trying to prepare this talk. And I had to resolve to my little girl, 10 years old, to teach me the tricks that are on Facebook. And I just use Facebook to say happy birthday, you know, all that kind of usual stuff. And by the way, as you all know, today is Randa's birthday, so we want to wish her a happy birthday. So anyway, the whole idea of Facebook is communication and getting people together and get connected. And to kick off, I want to ask 2 people to volunteer who consider themselves really good friends here. I want 2 people. 2 volunteers. Before I start picking. Okay, we have 2. Although I didn't want those 2, but actually. There's the ones that I'm getting. Get up, come on, you volunteer. They're not best mates anyway, but we'll see. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start by connecting. You know how this thing works? Okay, guys, this is what you need to do. Okay, go all the way to the other end. Yeah? That's why I didn't want them.
It's used for kids, man.
Okay, we're going to spend 2 hours fixing this anyway. So, that's exactly why I didn't want okay. So, connecting, previously before we had any kind of this technology that we're all living in, we were using like preliminary stuff. So I remember, until Steve fixes this or destroys it, I remember my grandfather used to tell me, I hate telephones, and by that time there wasn't even mobiles. Okay, so it was the big old black telephone with the round thing. And he used to tell me, I hate telephones. I told him, why do you hate telephones? He says, because people stop visiting. God rest his soul in peace, I don't know what he would be doing if he was living today. Okay, so guys, I want you to speak to each other through this thing and see if you can, you have to be speak is from your mouth.
No, he's going to speak, I'm going to listen.
Okay. Okay. I want you to tell him something that, that you really, a message that you want to tell him. Okay, so he's your good friend, so tell him something. Tell him that something that you're going through, like a problem or something. Just, let's see if it works.
You have to stretch it.
Okay, you have to stretch it a little bit, but he's going to stretch it anyway.
I stretched it, look what happened, bro.
Use the other ear,
From this.
Okay, so this is not working. Okay, so this is working. Okay, I have another bit of technology here. Let's use remote email. Okay, so here is a message. Write a message to your friend on this thing.
You alright?
Okay, hold on to this. Right on. Yeah. Okay, like this. Now this is just an idea of remote email.
Oh, wow.
Okay, hang on.
Wow.
And now we're going to just send this email all the way through.
And you're not playing?
Sometime.
No.
Now, you want to send something? Huh? You have a pen? Yeah.
No.
Go ahead. Okay, I'm just trying to illustrate what could happen when we're having communication. Okay, just trying to get you a little bit awake. Okay, too late. So then, yeah, as it's going.
What are you doing, bro?
Connection failure, man. Okay, sit down. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you guys is, through a little bit more of interaction, is that sometimes we really over-depend on technology, and when something like this happens, for communication, we're in a bit of a trouble. But let's start off with this. Thank God for technology. Who disagrees with that? Okay, good. Thank God for technology. And what I was surprised about is I was going through the internet and then I found different types of prayers. Okay? People praying for different things. And there was a small child who was asked to pray for something that he really liked most. And he came up with this. I just took a bit of the prayer. He said, "And God, there's one more thing I wish that you could do. Hope you don't mind me asking. Please bless my computer too." Now I know it's unusual, that's a motherboard, but just listen a second while I explain to you, Lord. And that's not Fabi, by the way. She looks like her, but it's not. You see that little metal box holds more than odds and ends. Inside those small compartments rest all of my family and friends. Please bless those in my address book, every single family member and friend. Bless each email inbox and each person who hits send. This was a little boy writing a prayer in a sort of a poem. So he's praying for his computer because that's how dear his computer is to him. And another thing that I found interesting is while I was coming back home from work on Wednesday, I was going through reading the paper, and then I found this. Londoners are addicted to the web. And you can read through it, but the one point that I want to highlight is these ones underlined. 30% of Londoners spend 6 hours or more a day online. Do you confirm this? Online. Forget about work, doing work, like you're on your laptop at work or something, online. So through those social media networking. How many hours do you spend? 6? 5? 4? 24? Okay. I'm not going to go into that. So do we actually overuse it? Okay. Sometimes I feel like we're like this guy over here. BlackBerry, iPod, laptop, mobile phone, even watching TV and tuning into Sky. I don't know what the dog is doing there, but anyway, that's, we're like doing too many things at the same time, isn't it? And we're so hooked up on technology and we're so hooked up online and on the internet that we actually, while thinking that we're connecting and getting more and more connected with each other, we're actually disconnecting. Because we're disconnecting physically. We're not connecting anymore as we should. And I'll give you some interesting statistics about Facebook. Actually, I'll ask you questions. How many Facebook users do you think there are?
500.
500? You've been on the internet.
No, he watched
You watched this before. 500 million users on Facebook. Okay. How many minutes in total do they spend a day? Give a number. 500 million? 1 minute a person? Come on, give me a number. An hour each? A little bit more? 6 billion minutes being spent on Facebook a day. What about the percentage of users who log in every single day? No, I was surprised. 41 only. I must be in the other 69 who don't, 59, sorry, who don't log in. The average user spends 55 minutes, almost an hour of his day just on Facebook. Forget about all the other Twitters and all the other stuff. So just an hour on Facebook. How many users do you think, how many friends per user do you think there is?
Average?
Average, 130. Okay. How many, this one is in, how many photos do you think is uploaded in a month?
million.
A million. More. 7 million.
Billion.
A billion. 3
3
billion. 3 billion photos, and this is by this company, Life Research and Oxygen.
Every Coptic
What
wedding.
exactly?
3 Coptic weddings are all over this place. 3 billion and 14 million videos. They don't marry that much, but anyways. The events that are created each month, 3.5 million events, You have 45 million active user groups. And now you have the percentage of people who wake up in the middle of the night to check their Facebook. And I found this ridiculous. Come on. I died to go into bed. I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night to check my Facebook. But there was. How much percent do you think? 15, 5, 20? We're getting closer. 21. 21% of the users wake up in the middle of the night to check their Facebook. They're sick or I'm sick because I don't do that. There's something wrong. And this is my most favorite statistic of all. And ladies, no offense, but percentage of women aged 18 to 34, and this doesn't have anything to do with your age group policy, who check Facebook in the morning before brushing their teeth. 98. That's wonderful. A third of ladies, do you disagree?
I question these statistics, because I've read some of the Facebook privacy policy, and I don't know how they could get that information.
It's research. They do research. Yes, this came from this research firm. They did research for the last two questions. These are all facts that they get from, like, the numbers are all there. But these last two they've come through this research firm, Lightspeed Research, and it was over a population of 10,000 people. So when 33% of 10,000 people from the ladies say they do it before brushing their teeth in the morning, that's serious. Yeah, that's really serious. Or they just don't brush their teeth anyway. But anyway, let's go back to origins. How did God create us? Did God create us so hooked up on social networking and technology? Is that how God created us? Come on, guys, wake up.
Well, he created us. He did create us to be part of a social network. He created Adam and Eve together, and the animals and the wildlife around them. So he created us not by ourselves, but part of a social network.
Brilliant. That's exactly it. In Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And he created the lady. Now, people might argue the lady was not a suitable person. That's a different argument. But for now, God created for us a helper. And he created us to socialize. So it's not good that we are alone in our own cocoons, not mingling with other people, but we need to socialize and we need to connect. So I have a question. Does God want us to invent and use more and more technology? Or does he want us to socialize more and more? And don't give me that face, so I want an answer. Okay? I want an answer. Yeah?
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, technology can be useful for us to be able to be more connected. And if you look at what technology's done for us, as a church in the past 10, 20 years, it's been very effective. Yes, it's had some negative impacts, but it's been very positive on the whole.
Great. Anyone agree, disagree? Does it? Yeah? Yeah, she gave the straight direct answer. Everybody agrees to what she said? No?
I feel like because of technology, we don't go the extra mile to meet with somebody or to be physically in contact with people, and I think that has hindered our personal relationships a lot more than before.
Yeah, that's a point of view. So yeah, it is good to have technology. So does God want us to use more and more technology?
I guess to use but not abuse.
To use, not abuse. Well said. To use but not abuse. So how much percentage? So if I ask just with people raising their hands, how many would agree that God wants us to use more and more technology? Raise your hand. This? Okay.
Depends on how you use it.
Sorry.
So if you use the technology to facilitate you meeting each other or using each other instead of using it as a substitute to meeting up with each other, then that's good. But if you use it in the wrong way, then you probably wouldn't want to use it either.
Okay. I saw another hand. Somebody raised his hand up here.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify what you mean, like use it for what exactly, like yeah, no, I mean like
for social networking.
just purely social
No, well,
networking?
that's what I'm here to talk about. Unfortunately,
I mean,
I'm not going to.
yeah, but I mean, are you replacing the technology with the interaction, like personal interaction?
I'm not. No, I'm
with
not.
friends?
At this point in time, I'm not replacing it. I'm just asking the question: does God want us to use more and more of this social networking technology?
Instead of.
I'm not going to go to the second part yet. And I can't say instead of because this is left to our decision.
I think the motivations behind the technology are important because when technology was first coming out, there was a reason to innovate. It wasn't that if you innovated, then you have a capability and therefore you use the capability. It's you innovate because you need the capability. So if you have the desire to do something that is wholesome and good, and then you invent technology around that, that enables you to do that, then that is good, that is godly. But if you enable offshoots of technology that's there to enable you to just to have more and more capabilities for more freedom of choice, but without any intent behind it, then that's a waste of time.
Good. So I feel that there's a consensus here. Go ahead, sorry.
I think it can go back to the commandments. You shall have no other God before you me. So if we're not making the use of that technology idolatrous and we're not putting it before him, I think he's fine with it.
That's good. That's exactly where we're going. So overall, we're saying it's good to use technology. God wants us to use technology, but not, as Mark said, not to abuse technology. Okay. But if God wants us to use technology and wants everything that's good for us, then why did not He create everything for us from the beginning? Why didn't He not create just technology for us from the beginning? Why didn't we just come into the world and we have everything there, all the technology? Why all this one step after the other?
Well, I think all of this technology is from God. I think all of this, all
So
of
He's
this
just dropping it a bit at a time.
Yeah, well, I don't know what God's plan is, but all of this is from God.
So
This is
he's
not
given us the tools to create ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Yeah.
But I think we didn't give it to us at the beginning because, technology advances with the advancement of humanity and the advancement of our minds. And so, little by little, as more technology is introduced to us, we grow a little bit more, or like vice versa.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That is very close. That's very much the answer, because in 2 Peter 3:18, St. Peter says, "But grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." Now, how does this link to what I'm saying? As you're growing and as we're going through this maturing stage of becoming more and more mature human beings and getting more and more into technology, we learn more about God. Because, for example, could we ever have thought that this just existed on its own? This outer space, this Milky Way, this galaxy is just existing on its own? No. Every time we see this, we know there has to be a higher being that has created all this and is controlling it to such finer, minute detail and keeping everything intact that there is a God. And by doing that, we get to grow in the grace and knowledge of whom? Jesus Christ. And that's the whole idea of this. So God is giving us, as we just said, as we just heard, bit of technology, and we're growing into it because through that technology we get to come closer and learn about God Himself and grow in His knowledge and His grace. So use, but not abuse, and through this use and through this growth we get to know more and more about God. Just a little bit about the human nature. The human nature is just a little bit of characteristics. It is the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act. We're born with these characteristics, but the end product or the end result of who we are is a result of social experiences that we gain through family, friends, school, university, church, tube, because we spend most of our time there, that kind of stuff. And I found this philosopher, he's an American philosopher, George Herbert Mead. He died in 1931. He said the basis of humanity is the self. And the self is a very social phenomena and is inseparable from society. So the self and the society are very much intact. And this is why the connection between the two cannot be explained, except through the emergence of the self through the society. So that's why when we say socializing, it is also we are growing the self. But why do we socialize? We have a need. We depend on other people, don't we? And we have friends and we need to depend on them, and there's a need that we need to share things with each other. There's satisfaction. Okay? I like to be part of this group. I like to socialize with these people. I find satisfaction regardless of a need or not. I learn and I grow when socializing. I get to know more about people, more about culture. It affects me. I affect in it. And finally, because of my mental health, or else I'll go nuts if I don't socialize. Because I'm this happy, this unhappy. Okay? That's if I don't socialize. So it's very important for my mental health. And I'll just call it modern social networking, MSN, which is not the Microsoft, this is my own brand, which I'll trade for today, MSN. So the modern social networking has some benefits. Of course, it connects many people. It's always available, anytime, anywhere, easy to use, new features. And the benefits of it can go on. But does it have downsides? Does it have drawbacks? Okay, what are the drawbacks of my MSN? Sorry?
Physical meeting.
Physical meeting. What are the drawbacks from using the MSN? Communication barriers. Time consuming. Yeah.
It can lack the human interaction.
Lacks the human interaction. Yeah, as you said.
You socialize with people that you wouldn't normally make the effort with if you were face to face with them.
So this uncomfort zone, you break a
Well,
little
you
bit.
know more about people that you don't actually know personally face to face.
Can you socialize with the wrong people? Yeah, we can be socializing with the wrong people. This very quiet corner over here. Okay. Any other drawbacks? Huh?
You can be misunderstood easily.
Can this be misunderstood easily?
You often tend to be in a place where nobody can see what you're doing other than the other person talking to you, which is not healthy necessarily.
Yeah. What about this one?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. How many times have we got comments on certain pictures that we put on Facebook that we instantly withdrew? Isn't it? Embarrassments. I'll tell you something. Just remind me. While I was just setting up, all of a sudden my mobile started ringing and I got it out and it said Randa's birthday. And I said, oh my God, I'm just in front of Randa now and I just have a reminder of her birthday here instead of like actually remembering Randa because she's so dear to me that I have to remember her birthday. I'll tell you something which is even worse. I have a friend of mine in Egypt. We were sitting once, we were all out, like families, couples, and then all of a sudden his mobile started going on so loud. So he took his mobile, and he was so embarrassed, he took his mobile out and then he shut it. I told him, George, what's wrong? He said, later. And then his wife started looking at him and I said, okay, there's something suspicious. George, what's wrong? And then later. Okay, so afterwards, I just talked to him. Fi, Ali, it was my wedding anniversary's reminder. Today's your wedding anniversary? He said, yes. I said, عملت حاجة? That's why my wife was looking at me. Okay, do you have the same experience? No. That's okay.
I'm just thinking, actually, all of these things are benefits because if you didn't have that reminder, then you'd be even more embarrassed. So he could rectify his mistake by, okay, we'll do something the next day or that evening or whatever. And like with someone's birthday, he'd remember it and then you do. Do you know what I mean? Like,
She's not
all
talking
of
from
these things.
experience.
All of these things are benefits. Like,
Yeah, but he was not smart enough to do it at least a week before. But on the day, in the evening, day is over. Of course, yeah, it's too late. Yeah, but something like this. Let's talk about this. Yeah, it's good to use that. But something like this, I mean, your wedding anniversary, a very dear person's birthday. How can you forget that? I mean, this is why because we keep on depending more and more on these black things that we carry around with us, that we forget totally about these things. And to be very honest with you, these things are what mean most to each one of us, isn't it? When someone very dear to you forgets about your birthday, you're upset. I mean, it ruins the whole day. Even if you get 1 million Facebook messages, your best friend forgot about your birthday. How will you feel? You'll be okay?
I was okay. It happened to me. I was okay. You know, but I know, my friend is not on Facebook every day. And he lives very far away, so he couldn't call me. But he did catch up with me later. You see, I'm fine.
Use technology to remember your birthday. That's the point.
But I was trying to make a point. Sorry, I was trying to make a point about that. Is that you have then a public forum in which to forget. So it's not just that my friend forgot my birthday; he publicly forgot my birthday. You know what I mean?
But you're okay now.
I'm very fine. I'm very fine.
When is your birthday?
11/11.
Why does the fact that someone is actually making the effort to find a way to remember your birthday because they have a bad memory or for whatever reason they forget? They've actually made the effort. They've put it in their diaries that if they're going to forget, then it gives them a reminder. That's an effort. That shows that I'm here.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be looking for excuses to hate on.
No, we're not doing that. But let me. Okay, who here is married? Who here is married?
Yeah.
I don't even know the year that she was born.
It's things like that. Okay, it's when we're talking about very, very close, tight relationships. That you don't need a reminder for. That you should not put on your mobile. And regardless of how bad your memory is, like I don't know, when you all get married, God willing, and if you're when you all get married, you'll find it very difficult, especially the ladies. Okay, the men مش مشكلة, احنا كلنا ضايعين. Ladies, if your husband doesn't remember your birthday or your wedding anniversary, he's mincemeat. He's done.
That's why they're mind
Okay, let me ask one Would you like to remember to get to a reminder? You don't anyway, I don't want to debate into this more, but it's what I'm touching about is we sometimes over depend on it, and the end result is this. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying. I think it's good to have technology.
Sorry, guys.
It's good to have technology to remind you. Like I'm all for reminders because like my mind's like a sieve. Like I would have forgotten it's my birthday. But I mean, like I think the idea is like just like personal. Like this idea, like like my parents aren't on Facebook, and so if I had to look on Facebook to know when my parents' birthdays, it's like I live in the same house. I should know my parents. Like this idea of like our relationship is more than cross communication, and I think like of course Facebook's really great at knowing 10 billion people, but like there's one person who said like you may know 10,000 people on Facebook, but you really only speak to maybe 5 or 6 on a regular basis. So I think it kind of pulls away from the personality of like just don't know people well enough. I confess on Facebook.
Yeah. Same. Anyway, so to move on, so that's one of the drawbacks. Another drawback is addiction. It is.
You were on Google Image, weren't you?
I was on Google Image. That's technology. Okay, and do you know what FAD and IAD stands for? Yeah, Facebook addiction disorder and internet addiction disorder.
Andrew, it's not. It's right
It's not. Okay, so actually, these FAD and IAD are actually diseases or illnesses, which people try to. People actually go. Yes, psychologists actually receive people to treat with FAD and IAD. Okay, and he tells them you have an internet addiction disorder or you have a Facebook addiction disorder. So it was initially IAD, and then people after Facebook kicked in, they became FAD. So, and I'll give you another example. My little girl Karen, she sometimes invites her friends over for sleepover, and so they're in the middle of the night. They like to do this. They usually have this midnight feast or whatever. Now that's been old style for us, Moda Adima, gone away. Now they're staying in bed in a dark room and it's silent. So I said, God, the girls went to sleep early, that's brilliant. So I can go to sleep. And then my wife just, opens the door just to sneak that everything is fine and the girls are okay, 3 girls, and then she sees those lights popping up. She says, what's going on? And she opens the door and then she calls me, she tells me, Sherif, come, I want to show you something. And the 3 of them are on their Nintendo DSs connected, playing in the middle of the night without talking to each other. And then my wife tells them, okay, stop. You have to, you either come in here to connect and play and, do something, or you go to sleep. Okay, mommy, we'll connect. They shut their Nintendo DSs and they start texting each other while sitting next to each other. I said, this is crazy. You here are to spend time together and socialize. But they like the use of this. Come here. No, come back. This way. No worries.
Did you see a Bible there?
So, this is the addiction that I'm talking to you about. So people get so hung up on this new technology that they completely forget about socializing more and more. Okay? A final drawback is this: complete dependability. We're just completely dependent on this. I have another friend, and he has a driving school, and he once lost his mobile, and it's as if he lost his wife and children. He was close to tears, and he was down. What's wrong? He said, all my life is on that mobile. Everything. I have all my reminders for my work, because he teaches driving, so he has all the people backed up, so all the calendar is there. All the accounts are on my mobile, so I don't know who owes money or who I don't owe money. And even I can't now present my accounts because my accountant is going to kill me. And all my reminders are there on my mobile. And I think I have something that's coming up in the family soon which I can't remember, and I'm going to be really embarrassed. So he was really, really upset. His whole life depended on that piece of metal that we carry around. And it's amazing. I'll give you an example from the from the Bible. Saint Paul wrote a letter epistle to the Romans, and in that one, he said, "I would have loved to come with you instead of writing you an epistle and sending it to you." At his time, sending a messenger with a letter, that was technology. Okay, that was the technology of that time. Okay, person carrying the letter and running away to deliver. That I would consider the technology of the time. He wanted to send a message. He didn't have the ability of texting at that time, so he sent someone with this epistle. And in that one, he said, I want to come to you. And even when we read the explanations of our church fathers of this, they said St. Paul at one point in time was not going to write his letter to the Romans because he was actually planning to go there himself. But because he was held back, he had to write the letter.
So how is this a drawback? Because he wrote that letter, we're blessed with the message.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying
instead of him going face to face, we now have a record of it that we can share with each other.
That's good, but what I'm saying here is that he did not completely depend on this. I'm not saying that he
I
completely
see.
depended
Okay.
on this.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that he did not completely.
So
He
he
wanted to go and do it.
So use it as a second option.
Exactly.
If he really wanted to meet them.
Exactly. So if he really wanted to do something and he was not able to do it, then I use it as second resort. What we tend to do with technology is we use it as the first resort rather than the second resort. So why too much MSN, my brand, is avoidance. How many, I mean, we've been reading, I don't say we do this, but how many people have we heard of that have been dumped from a relationship on Twitter or on Facebook or I hope nobody experienced this, you know, but yeah, go ahead.
He has another story.
You have a story?
My wife, she just was cleaning up her profile, and she said she took away our marriage relationship in there, and so I started getting questions. You know, what's going on?
It could be a signal. You never know.
She put it back.
She put it back. Okay, that's fine. You didn't force her though, did you? No, okay.
Yeah,
So-
because it goes, so-and-so is no longer listed as married. So
Really?
it actually updates the profile with a message of what's changed.
Because that explains it. Because when I updated my profile on Facebook after a while, because Karen told me, my little girl again, she told me, Daddy, you should write that you're married to mommy on Facebook. So I did that, and then everybody said, Mabruk, Mabruk, Mabruk. Now I understand. Okay, brilliant. So, avoidance. I'll give you an example from the Bible on avoidance. This lady, she wanted to avoid. She wanted to avoid everybody that she could meet. So she went out in the 6th hour to draw water from the well. Because she didn't want to meet anybody, she just wanted to avoid everybody that she can. And out of all people, who does she meet? Jesus. Okay? Maybe I was even thinking in the back of my mind, maybe that lady, out of all people that she did not want to meet, was Jesus himself. That's why she was going out in the 6th hour, because she cannot bear the look of people in their eyes when they're telling her, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner. And that could be God's message to her. And she didn't want to see that message from God himself. So out of all people, God came to her, but with a different message. Okay? Not with the message that she thought God was sending to her through people, but with a message that God wanted to tell her himself directly, which is, I love you. And I've come specifically for you at that point in time, because I'm going to change your life. And did he change her life?
Amen.
Big time. Instead of a sinner, she became a preacher. Okay? Another reason why we use too much MSN, it's not actually loneliness. I consider loneliness the result. I consider the reason the lack of self-confidence. Okay? When you lack your self-confidence, you try to tie yourself up in your own cocoon. And you don't want anybody to see you, and you don't want to mingle with anyone, because you, at that point in time, you're not confident about something. You're not confident about a decision you've made. You're not confident about something that you're doing. You're not confident about something there. Okay? And that's why you want to be lonely. But Les Carter here said something about loneliness. He said loneliness is a feeling of separation. And I've highlighted this separation word. Isolation or distance in human relations. Loneliness implies emotional pain, empty feeling, yearning to feel understood, accepted by someone. So this loneliness leads me to overusing these type of things. Because I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling out of the group, and I want to go into that group. And my way of feeling satisfied that I am part of the group is by connecting with them on my MSN. Okay? Through that brand. On social networking. So I keep on chatting with people. I keep on tweeting with people. I keep on doing something. And that way I feel, I'm deceiving myself, I feel that I'm still connected. But I'm actually not connected because I'm feeling very lonely. And this separation can be from three things. I either separate from God, and that's the first step. Okay? Then I start separating from others, and then finally I separate from myself. I separate from God when I say, God, I need some time of my own. I've been doing too much things for you, so I need my own time. Once I do that, and it's all about me, that's my first separation. I've just separated from God. That will lead me to the second stage, which is separating from others. Because, guys, I just need some time out. Some people have always passed through this and they're like, you know what, I just need some time out. I need to just be far away from people, need to be far away from my friends. I'll come back to you, a week, a month, a year, could be forever, God knows when, and then we're just out there. This will lead to the final one, which is self. I can't take the pressure. I'm feeling now, I'm left out from God's presence, I'm left out from people's presence, I'm all on my own, it's too much pressure for me to handle. And again, I always like to go back to the Bible, to take examples from the Bible. So separation from God. Do you know this guy? King Saul? Then he separated from God. It even says it in 1 Samuel 15. Now the word of the Lord came to Samuel saying, I greatly regret that I have set up Saul as king. God is regretting to make Saul king. Because of what? Because he has turned back from following me. He's the one who has chosen not to connect with me. He's chosen to be separate from me. And what was the end result of Saul? He died in war. Okay? And he was separated from God, and you know the whole story of King Saul. That's exactly what we could experience when we just walk away from God and we don't want to connect with Him anymore. What about separation from others? Does anybody have an example from the Bible? Someone who separated from everyone. Who? Joseph. I don't have that example here, sorry. Can you think of the example that I have here?
Judas.
Jonah.
Huh? Jonah, Judas. Yeah, I have another one, sorry. Gideon. Do you know Gideon?
No.
You don't know Gideon?
Yeah, I know Gideon.
Right, so I got you a new one.
This was when he was hiding.
Huh?
Was this when he was hiding?
He was hiding. He was hiding from Amalekites, and he wanted to be far away from others because he felt insecure. He didn't feel confident enough that he can actually stand up and face others. So that's why he was hiding from the Midianites, and the word of God came to him, and look at what God says. Go in this might of yours. Might? I'm hiding. What might are you talking about? This is how God deals with us. He comes to the point where you have the problem, okay, and he just presses.
It's true.
Actually, I should press you a bit. Goes to the problem and then presses really hard. And once he presses, he eases that pain off. So he goes to the point, that might of yours, Gideon, go out and fight the Midianites because I'm going to save Israel from them. And then all of a sudden Gideon remembers, oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. So I am the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. I'm way down there. I can't do anything. And that's why I'm hiding and I'm just separating from others. This is how we feel sometimes. The last example about separation from self. Any example from the Bible? Somebody separated from himself?
Judas.
He's the most standing out one. But why Judas? Before I go on this, why Judas? How did he separate from himself?
Killed himself.
Yeah, he killed himself. That's the end result.
Well,
There's something that happened that led him to kill himself. How did he separate from himself?
He separated from God and then from the disciples, and then he ended up there.
Brilliant. That's where I was going to. He was separated from God, from Jesus, separated himself from the disciple, and then he ended up what? Conflicting with himself. Because there are two things going on within him that he could not bear. One thing inside of me is that this is my master, whom I've been following for 3 years. I know he's the Messiah. And in the second part of me, thinking with my mind, he should be king by now, isn't it? He's not king anymore. Where's his glory? We should wipe out those Romans and we should take back our empire, and that's not happening. And then he ends up doing this. And I chose this verse specifically from Matthew because it shows the conflict between two things. How can you betray with a kiss? A kiss is something that you show affection and love to someone, and you betray at the same time. That's just complete separation from self. That's as if you're fighting against something else. You're doing two conflicting things at the same time. It's like going to the pub and singing hymns. I hope nobody does that. It's doing two different things at the same time which conflict with each other. And that's exactly what happens. That's when you end up with separating from yourself.
Would you say Peter's another example of that?
Sorry?
Would you say Peter's another example of that, although with a more favourable outcome?
Well, Peter is a character. He didn't separate from himself. Peter he fell into a sin, or he fell into a weakness. He didn't separate from himself, because the separation from himself was you're going into one direction where you're going in, like you inside of you, you're thinking, I must do this, but you're doing something else. And that was not Peter's actual reaction at that time. Okay? At that point in time, he was faced with something and he left. This was a process. Judas, he was a whole process going through it. Peter was more of a second. Asked the question, he denied. Weakness. This is how I'll see it. And it's up to debate.
But is there an example? Judas's outcome obviously was not favorable. But are you saying that, is there an example that can show us, if you've disconnected from self, there's still possibility for redemption?
Of course.
For coming back. So.
Of course, there's always. Once you connect from yourself, if it's going through a process, you can always come back and realize that you've connected from yourself and start building up the process again. You start building up to God again. So, for example, I'll give you an example. King Nebuchadnezzar? Okay, this king in the Old Testament, he was a pagan king. He didn't believe in God. Okay? But in his end days, he believed in the God of Daniel. And he even wrote it in the book of Daniel, and I believe in the God of Daniel. The process of him magnifying himself above all people was going step by step. He connected from God, disconnected from God, because he was magnifying himself to be a God. Then he disconnected from people because, I'm a God, I cannot mingle with those people. And then he started disconnecting from himself because he said, I'm up there, but I'm still in flesh. And this was a process that he was going through. When God struck him, and he was in the wilderness for 7 years living as a beast, and he came back to his minds, he found out that I can still come back to God. So, I don't know if this answers you as an example of a person disconnecting from himself and then realizing and coming back.
How did he disconnect from God when he was pagan initially?
He saw Daniel, and he highly trusted in Daniel, and there was all the things that happened with Daniel in the lion's den and all that kind of stuff. So he knew all about that. So he really was aware of God's existence.
Before we go to reconnect, can you be disconnected or connected with God and with yourself, but not with others? What is it?
Yes, you can be, because it's not a 3-stage thing. You don't go 3 stages, but you can be connected with God, but you can still feel that I'm disconnected a little bit from people. It is a self thing. You're isolating yourself away from people. So it is something that you can do irrationally, not noticing it.
But doesn't God replace the need to connect with others?
I would not say that, because if God replaces the need for me to connect with other people, He would not have created me a social being. So God has created me very much social. So with mingling with other people, I love Him more. Because let me ask you this: how can you love God that you do not see, and yet you're not loving the people that surround you?
But it's not me, you're not loving.
Sorry?
It's not you don't love them, but you don't. Which God fills.
So God fills you, and you want just to separate.
If you choose to on a moment to separate yourself from the others, like you said, everyone experiences this kind of thing in his life. It's not like the end of the world, because you always have God and you have yourself.
Yeah, but are you going to continue like this?
No, it's like a week.
Yeah, that's
or a year.
That's fine.
Like you said.
A year.
Like you said.
It all depends on how you want to do it. So if you want to disconnect for a while from people, it depends on the reasons and the situation that you're going through. And if it is really justified to disconnect from people, and the people around you will understand what you're going through. And then when you want to come back, you can. But it doesn't mean that you're disconnected from God or disconnected from yourself. Could be. You see, this is a very big question because it depends on the actual situation you're talking about.
Yeah, I think like being with God is meant to feel like all the love, like you're not meant to, the love of others isn't meant to be like an additional, it's meant to be like showing love of God, but love of God has to come first. But I mean like the idea of being on your own, like just think about like the monastic life, like they all go separate themselves off from the world and they just stay in a cell. That's the choice that they, you know, they want to have that communion, but also there's times when they go back to the monastery and have a bit of communion with each other. They have to have communion with each other, and then they go like, so there is still that part of community. Like God is very big on community, whether it's with another person or with 10 other people. But I think there has to be some other person in the mix, I think, just for you to practice the love that God is giving you. Like, you know, like your mother, your father, your brother, like, you know, you can manifest God's love by that way, I think.
So let's reconnect. Let's take what we said about the 3 issues and so we can wrap up. So instead of it's all about me, I have to realize that God really loves me and replace that. Because once I replace that and realize how God really loves me, I can never ever disconnect from God. Okay? And from others, I need some time out. Let's take out the last bit and let's replace it with I need my family and friends. I need them, they need me. Because we're in this together. And I'll tell you after this one, can't take the pressure anymore. Actually, if I have both of the above, and I'm feeling the confidence that I need, self-confidence, actually, I can deal with pressure. I'll tell you something, how I see those two. The beauty of our church, I'm talking from a church perspective, is that it gives us helpers to guide us. Okay? It's like a plant, and we are like plants, we're growing. You know, when a plant is first planted, they put next to it 2 stabilizers, one from each side. Those 2 stabilizers help the plant to grow up straight and high. Without them, if it's only one stabilizer, it will lean on one side or lean on the other side. If no stabilizers, all over the place. So these 2 stabilizers help it to grow in the right direction. And that's why I would like to take the first 2, how can I take guidance from this one? Take it from my church fathers. That's my first stabilizer. Take the love of God and knowing how to really love God through the church fathers and their guidance. And with the love and care of my family on the other side, I will grow up properly, in the right way. Okay? I'll end up with this. I can deal with pressure afterwards. It's just taking it from, just meditating on it from a pure church perspective. My final conclusion, because sorry I've taken too much of your time, is let's do less of this and do more of this, because it's very important for us as we grow. Any questions? Thank you.